Welcome back in, everybody, to Warchant TV. I am on the bottom of your screen, and I am underneath two pillars of Warchant.com, and not the kind of pillars that donate to the cause, but the pillars that create the cause. Ira Schoffel, the managing editor of Warchant.com, is right there. Corey Clark, top left of your screen, the senior writer, the lead writer here at Warchant.com. And today we're going to be talking about the cornerback room because somebody is leaving it, Jarvis Brownlee. But before we get going, everybody, remember, hit the like button. You see the screen up right now. Hit the like button underneath this video. This may be welcome news to you or not, but hit that thumbs up. We find more Florida State fans who are looking for the best coverage in the business. That's what we do here at Warchant TV. And help yourself out by hitting subscribe. If you hit the subscribe button, our content will populate for you on your home screen of YouTube app or youtube.com. Whatever it is, we'll be right there, so subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already. So Jarvis Brownlee, it's the news on Thursday morning, has entered the transfer portal, and it seems like this is the punctuation to the sentence. The time for Jarvis Brownlee in Tallahassee is over. Ira, is this a surprising move, not surprising move, somewhere in the middle? Give us a little context on that, if you would, please.
I mean, if you turn back the clock a month or 6 weeks, it was very surprising. I mean, Jarvis Brownlee started 11 games last year, up and down, not an all-time, not an all-ACC performer, has had some highs and some lows, and an inspirational player. He's a guy a lot of the guys on the team like, and, started 11 games last year and looked good in the tour of duty when we were out there before the spring. But then there was some kind of flare-up between him and the coaching staff. He got disciplined. He wasn't going to be there for the first week of spring practice. He tweeted some stuff about NIL, although we've been told that's not why he had to leave the team or was off the team for a little bit. But the talk at the end of the first week of practice was that he might come back after spring break. That didn't happen, and now he's entered the transfer portal. So it's kind of a surprising deal if you look at the big picture. Last year he was a starting corner. He's coming back as a redshirt sophomore, and he's not on the team anymore. But it's been kind of devolving over these last few weeks, and I think part of the issue is, from Jarvis Brownlee's standpoint, Florida State wasn't going to beg him to come back because they have a lot of options at that cornerback position. And so he moves on, but it's not like Florida State is left, in the lurch because they do have a lot of cornerbacks.
For a full list of those corners, you can find the partner story at warchant.com. We'll make sure that we have that linked at the bottom of this video on YouTube. So if you're looking for it, you can see the full list of players. But Corey, that's right. I mean, it's closer to a panoply than it's been in a long time here in Tallahassee for the cornerback room. Seems like Florida State has a lot of options. Who are some of the players that have stood out to you as potential replacements for what Jarvis Brownlee brought to the table as we've gone through, 5 spring practices?
Maybe the guy that I thought less about, not I didn't think he was any good. He was a guy that we never talked about coming into spring practice, and that's Greedy Vance. Out of all the transfers, that they got, he was the one we kind of talked about the least because of the position he played, probably. And they already had so many. But to me, he's the guy. He's been the best of those guys. Obviously Duke Cooper, I think, is their best corner. Knowles is good, but he's a slot guy. Maybe they move him out. But yeah, I think Greedy Vance. It works out perfectly for him with Brownlee off the team now, or we assume in the portal anyway. And it's not like, number one, it's not like we think Florida State has a bunch of Deons in that room. That maybe losing a starter isn't the worst. You lost a starter, but Jarvis Brownlee wasn't all that great anyway. You know what I mean? Like he's. I'm not trying to kick dirt on the kid. But he's not a huge loss in talent. But like Ira said, he did seem to be like he played, there were games he was playing 89, 90 snaps a game.
A tough kid.
Yeah. And a really tough kid. Not a great cover corner. We all know that. But a really tough kid and kind of an inspirational guy, like Ira said, to the rest of the team because how hard he played. But yeah, that is one position in the secondary for sure where they seem to have enough bodies to be able to withstand a starter being off the team. The starter was not a very talented one, and we don't know how good these other guys are, like Jarian Jones and even Greedy Vance and somebody like that. But I don't think you're losing a ton talent-wise with Jarvis Brownlee off the team.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we like Jarvis Brownlee more as somebody who could come up and tackle in the run game and shed and do stuff like that more than cover. Of the 2 starters last year on the outside, maybe Brownlee was the better of him and Jarian Jones. But again, Ira, there are a lot of options here, and some of them are younger and some of them are not. Corey's right. Amarian Cooper, Duke Cooper on one side seems to have that on lock, or at least he's the leader in the clubhouse, but it's the outside on the other, be it the boundary or the field that Florida State's trying to fill. Who's caught your eye so far? Who would you like to bring up?
Yeah, and it's important to know that Jarian Jones did start for much of last season, but not the end of last season.
Yep.
Omarion Cooper, Duke Cooper, won that starting job the last few weeks, had the interception against Clemson, had a huge game against Miami. He was ACC Defensive Player of the Week or Defensive Back of the Week. After that game against Miami, he had an interception, 4 pass breakups, 2 tackles. It's really one of the best freshman defensive back performances we've seen in a long, long time. And has picked up right where he left off this spring. I mean, he's been dominant. As Corey said, he's been dominant at times at practice. So he's definitely one of the starting cornerbacks. And I think Brownlee was going to be competing, honestly, for the other starting quarterback job. And as you mentioned, Greedy Vance comes in. He transfers from Louisville, where he started over 10 games the last 2 seasons. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's definitely a playmaker. He's got that kind of swagger to him. But then they also have some other guys that have experience that, we really, might be a little bit unexpected. And one in particular is Renardo Green, who's started a lot of games the last 2 years at safety. He actually began his career at FSU at cornerback. He's moved back to cornerback this year. He's healthy. He was injured for much of last season. He hasn't looked great. He hasn't been a star at spring practice, but he's been a solid guy that's played in 27 college football games. So he's a guy in that mix. And then there's a bunch of younger guys that are really talented. I mean, the true freshmen that have really blown everybody away this spring. Azaria Thomas has probably been the most impressive newcomer of those freshmen at cornerback. He's a guy that I think will be in the rotation. Sam McCall could work his way into the rotation. And then you've got a couple other guys like Demore Tate and Hunter Washington. Demore Tate was the top recruit 2 years ago, or 3 classes ago. Had academics his first year, didn't play much last year. He's starting to come around a little bit. Hunter Washington, I think, was the top cornerback in last year's class. Didn't play much last year, but he seems to be coming around. So there's a lot of guys that now the door is wide open. That should be a tremendous competition.
You say there's a lot of guys. It's not like we're sitting here saying there's a lot of All-American candidates back there. But the guy they're replacing wasn't an All-American candidate. Right. You know what I mean? I think that's the discrepancy, the difference between Brownlee and Jarian Jones, or Brownlee and Vance, or Brownlee and even some of the freshmen. Probably isn't that chasm isn't that wide. This isn't a loss that can't be overcome, but we don't want you guys to think that it's just a bunch of for future first round picks at corner either. It's just that you're not having to replace a future first round pick either. Just a really tough kid that really liked to tackle.
Well, you might have future first round picks there, but maybe not this year. They may not look like Azaria Thomas may not look like it this year, but he may be that down the road. And my point is that it's not a huge drop off from what they had. But also sometimes, man, when you return starters, sometimes the guys behind them aren't necessarily as motivated because they don't see the window to opportunity, or they're playing with the third team on the other side of the field. Again, I think you're going to see even more spirited competition at that position because it is wide open now.
And it's one thing, to finish out ahead in spring camp, but it's quite another to win the job in the fall. This is going to be something that continues on. It's not just a spring issue. It's going to be a battle all the way through fall camp, because if you've got a young player like a Sam McCall or an Azaria Thomas who are looking for reps on the outside, well, the development over the summer and into the fall, they should have a steeper curve, a learning curve where they might catch up. It's going to be an interesting battle to watch. One other note, I will say, the day before spring camp started, the position coach Marcus Woodson told me that their hope was if they were to look at Kevin Knowles on the outside, because he's a bigger name and somebody who's been productive in the slot for FSU, that Greedy Vance might be the name that they try and cross-train in the slot. We'll see.
And to just kind of carry over that, because we didn't talk too much about it, but Kevin Knowles, if that happened, Kevin Knowles could then move outside. And I think a lot of people were wondering, could Kevin Knowles be the answer at the other corner? And we guess he could. We just haven't seen him work. I mean, Corey, you've been out there every day as well. I don't think we've seen him much work at the outside corner position, but it did sound like that's something they wanted to look at.
Yeah, no, Indeed. There's no doubt. Corey, you've seen, indeed, he says. Yeah, so you've seen, for the most part, without getting into too many specifics, Kevin obviously could cover in one-on-one drills. It's just a matter of where he lands. And that'll be something that will be asked and talked about, not just in this camp, but in fall camp as well. Guys, we discussed this before it all started, too, before spring camp started. This was one position group that was likely to have attrition. We just didn't expect that it would come quite this soon. But Jarvis Brownlee enters the transfer portal. His time in FSU is now done. We will see who takes his job. For Ira Schoffel, the managing editor of Warchant.com, Corey Clark, senior writer, lead writer of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang. I'm the director of original content, you guessed it, at Warchant.com. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel if you haven't, everybody, and stay tuned to Warchant TV for the latest spring practice coverage.